Good evening, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to Hilaal Live. My name is Faraz Patel. I'd like to thank you for staying with us. I'd also like to thank my colleague Lukman Shadrack for taking you through for the first part of the show. Now, as South Africans and residents of Johannesburg struggle to come to terms with a deadly fire that happened within the CBD, many questions are being asked about management and how these buildings are actually maintained. Many buildings within the Johannesburg CBD are being hijacked, and it seems no accountability or even the will to sort this out seems very reluctant. Joining us now is the General Manager from the Johannesburg Property Owners and Managers Association, Angela Rivers. Angela, thank you so much for joining us here on Hilaal Live.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. Angela, right, this wasn't the first time something has happened like this, and God forbid, we hope this isn't going to happen again. But surely this was something that was a disaster waiting to happen, wasn't it?
Absolutely. All hijacked buildings are a disaster waiting to happen. When a building is hijacked, the first thing to go is the fire equipment, the fire hydrants, the hoses. I've seen buildings where the fire escapes have been removed for scrap metal, and all hijacked buildings are a fire risk. So this was definitely an accident waiting to happen.
Angela, let's talk about maintenance, right? So we have these buildings in Johannesburg. Of course, they've been abandoned. The hijacking of it. Now, it doesn't just happen where you have families or a group of families saying, oh, here's a building, let me go ahead and do it. Surely there has to be a middleman and a middlewoman who, of course, facilitates this to happen. Now, within that facilitation, there isn't really a care for the well-being of the actual people. It's a matter of making money, and that's about it.
Building hijacking is big money, huge money. I was just doing a little sum today and working out if there were 200 families in that building and each family was paying 1,000 Rand, that's 200,000 Rand a month that these hijackers are putting in their pocket, tax-free, under the table. They're not paying water, they're not paying electricity, they're not paying rates, and they most definitely are not maintaining the building. But it's very important to note that a well-maintained, well-looked after, well-managed building will not get hijacked. Hijackers are looking for opportunities, and buildings that are not managed properly are easy targets. And that's why a lot of the city of Johannesburg's own buildings have been hijacked over the years because they are not managing their own properties properly.
But then, Angela, it comes to the question. The city council, the metro. I listened to the press conference yesterday of Kabelo Gwamanda, and it just seems to be a sense of lukewarm when it came to questions regarding buildings and its maintenance. I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say that these buildings just really lack maintenance and the proper regulations that buildings within urban areas need to adhere to.
It's not just about even a lack of maintenance. These buildings are gutted. Everything that can be pulled off and sold will be pulled off and sold. There's no lifts in hijacked buildings. Even staircase rails, if they're made of metal, they will be cut down and sold for scrap. I reckon every single part of the building that can be removed and sold for scrap will be sold for scrap. So it goes beyond maintenance. There is no maintenance. There's no toilets. There's no running water. There's no electricity. These innocent people are living in absolute squalor and destitution. And, I kind of, when you're living on the street, you will go, and if you can move into a place for 1,000 Rand and without having to produce all the paperwork that you need, you'll do what you need to do to not be living on the street. And that is where these hijackers take advantage of these innocent tenants.
Angela, for any person who probably does not know who the Johannesburg Property and Managers Association is, maybe give them an explanation to the work that you do in managing these buildings across Johannesburg, and of course other buildings within the metro, and of course your role in trying to make sure that regulations are adhered to, and of course this is done according to all of the acts which are prescribed within the Constitution.
Yeah. So JPOMA is a non-profit organization. Members pay an annual fee. And with that fee, we do things like we lobby against council. Every year when the tariffs come out, I do all the objections. I do objections to the bylaws. Our main role has always been to hold city accountable for what they're supposed to do, what they've promised the citizens of Johannesburg to do. Anything that a landlord in the inner city needs to make their lives easier, JPOMA does that for them. A couple of years ago, the members asked us to develop a building managers course because a lot of our building managers are not qualified. We developed a building managers course. We've now graduated over 150 building managers within the inner city because building management is so important to prevent hijacking. So one of the elements of the course that we teach is how to work with your tenants so that you work together to keep the building safe. A lot of tenants in well-managed building don't want them to be hijacked either. They like the security. They like the fact that when you come into a building, it's got fingerprint access, you've got your security guard, it's clean, you've got your running water. The majority of our members have even put jungle gyms and play areas for the children in the buildings so they don't have to play in the streets. So JPOMA is really a support structure for inner city property managers, developers, and landlords. We've been in existence for 20 years now. I've been with the organization for 9. And building hijackings has always been a passion for me. Since I started working in the inner city 20 years ago, after seeing how people live in these buildings, it became a deep passion of mine to hold the city accountable. And in 20 years, I think I know I have not been successful at all. All that's happened in 20 years is that my list gets longer and longer. And it's disheartening. And it's, if I look at what inner city property owners and developers are doing for tenants on a daily basis, and the amount of money and energy that they put in to make the tenants feel safe and secure in their buildings, it blows my mind. If I was explaining earlier to someone, the inner city is divided into precincts, what we call city improvement district. So you have the fashion district, you have the motor district, you have the High Court district, Newtown. So it's all divided into little neighborhoods. And the majority of the property owners in those precincts are paying levies for supplementary services that the city should be providing. So we're cleaning the streets ourselves. We're securing them with our own security guards. And the cities sit back and it's like, cool, you guys are doing that. We don't have to clean the streets. We don't have to worry about security. And I feel like now that we're with this problem properties is they're going to say, well, what can the private sector do to help us? And what more can we do? We're doing so much already just to protect the assets that we have. I think the private sector is getting disgruntled. I've got a perfect example of a situation in Berea where the city's own building called Casimir, it was specifically developed in order to, as government housing. So it's the building's own housing building. So it's their own housing, their own residential housing. And the building, 6 months after they moved residents into the building was hijacked. It's one of the worst hijacked buildings in the inner city at the moment. And one of my members has a building next door to it, and they cannot lease out the entire side of the building that backs off onto Casimir because the gunshots through the windows, bottles through the windows, bricks, stones, just get thrown straight through. So in order to protect their tenants, a third of their building is unleasable.
Angela, I heard in a previous broadcast, in the interview you did yesterday, where you brought this up and there was a brown envelope offered to you. Correct me if I'm wrong, a brown envelope offered to you and you were told that you could be silent. Are those the intimidations that are holding you back right now?
It's a little bit more nefarious than that. Yeah. I was told that it will cost 1,000 rand to make me disappear.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a bribe.
Yeah.
I've never been offered a bribe. I think I'd rather a bribe than told I'm only worth 1,000 rand. So no, I have been told that if I don't keep my nose out of it'll cost 1,000 rand to make me disappear. And for a long time, I have kept quiet, and I've kind of been very diplomatic with the council and trying to maintain relationships. But I just feel that after yesterday and 74 lives have been lost, it would be unjust for me to keep my mouth shut. It is not fair for the people who have lost their lives that this carries on. They cannot have died in vain. And I will not be silent anymore. And I will tell the truth whenever I'm asked the difficult questions.
Angela, we are running out of time. I just need to get in this one question. The PI Act, I mean, this is quite important when it comes to infrastructure within the city. President Cyril Ramaphosa, when he visited the area yesterday, insisted that there needs to be adherence to this. But is there really going to be adherence, especially from the city council? And is yesterday the perfect wake-up call for that PI Act to be now adhered to?
So the PI Act is very complicated because it is a constitution. It can only be changed through the constitution. But for for the government to say, oh, we are bound by legislation, and because of the PI Act, we can't do this and we can't do that. The PI Act has been in existence for 20 years. It has been a problem for the inner city for 20 years. It's not a new thing. They've had 20 years to fix it. And now that we're in a crisis and now that people have lost lives, now all of a sudden it's important that we look at the PI Act and we establish that it's not working. Why wait 20 years? The PI Act is a problem because it is virtually impossible to evict people and find alternative accommodation supplied by council. Council can't even supply normal accommodation, never mind temporary emergency accommodation, social accommodation, anything like that. There's a very, in the city's annual reports from last year, Joshco, which is the company that's in charge of the properties, the city's social housing, only collected 19% of their rentals in the inner city in the last financial year. They're not even trying to collect rent. JPO and the members, our collection rate is 98% in the inner city. And I just feel like it's a deliberate negligence and an absolute arrogant incompetence from the city side.
Angela, we'd like to thank you so much for joining us here on Hilaal Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Angela Rivers from the Johannesburg Property Owners and Managers Association. She is the general manager of that organization. We continue this discussion generally on Hilaal Live. We'd be having two different topics, but we feel there is a need for this topic to be given more time, more airtime. After the break, I speak to SERI. They're one of the organizations that have been pushing for the for many, especially citizens, undocumented citizens, to be in buildings or to be provided accommodation. I'll be speaking to their candidate attorney, Zanele Kanya, after the break. Do stay tuned.